Well, it's happening.
Everybody stay calm. What?
After quite a few months of uncertainty at this point, my wife and I have decided that we are moving to Houston this summer. We're planning on making our move to Houston sometime in August or September of this year, so it's going to be coming up pretty quickly. We're looking for a house right now. I'll talk more about kind of what we're planning on doing in the coming months in just a moment, but the big reason that we're making this move in the first place is the fact that my wife landed a really good job down there at one of their largest children's hospitals. So she'll finally become an audiologist. So she's finally going to be done with school and will have a great job to boot. But what about me? I have my job currently in Chicago. Well, thankfully, my current law firm has an office in Houston, and they're allowing me to make the switch down to Houston. I'm applying for the Texas bar right now, so I'll be licensed in both Illinois and Texas when it comes to practicing law, and that will make the transition very easy in that I don't have to get a whole new job. But anyways, like I said, I'll get back to talking about Houston in just a second and the logistics with that move, in addition to the big financial impacts that this move is going to have, moving from Chicago down to Houston, to very different states with very different political climates and very different business and tax climates. But I might as well go over this month's net worth numbers. That's the whole purpose of the series, is to document my progress as I try to reach a $1 million net worth and a passive income of $30,000 per year so that I can achieve financial independence. And I'm trying to do this within the next 5 years. I've been documenting my progress, or lack thereof, depending on the month, every single month for the past couple of years now. So if you want to stick around for the journey, then definitely be sure to subscribe. Not only will I be documenting whatever's going on with the net worth journey, but I'll also be talking about my move to Houston, all the logistics with that, and all the things that I'll be learning and experiencing as I go through it. But anyways, as a reminder, last month our net worth was just shy of $128,000. As always, let's start with the good stuff, the assets. I haven't really done much to add to my existing portfolio. I've really just been kind of building up a little bit of cash because I know that we're going to be buying a house very soon. Now it's going to be down in Houston. There's going to be moving costs associated with that. Probably going to have to buy a car or two when we're down there. So there's going to be some pretty substantial cash outlays in the coming couple of months. So I'm kind of slowing down my purchases of stocks and other investments in the meantime, but it's not as though I'm liquidating that portfolio in any way. I'm just kind of stopping the additions to it just for a short while I kind of figure out what's going on. But speaking of my portfolio, after a very brutal last episode where my stock portfolio fell a ton, a lot of it actually recovered to where it's actually up a couple percent over the last month, despite the otherwise rocky times that we're seeing in the stock market. And when it comes to making a house purchase or other larger purchases that probably will be coming up in the next few months, I do still intend to leverage something like my stock portfolio using M1 Finance's borrow feature, for example, where I can take out margin at under 3%. So that is always an option that we have right now. And I'm not trying to get too crazy with something like that, but it allows me to stay liquid while also staying invested. Granted, it adds risk to the portfolio. But like I already said, I'm still trying to focus on adding some more cash in the meantime, so I have reserves ready to go. I don't have to add too much extra risk in the portfolio, at least over the next few months. But that said, if there's a great investment opportunity that pops up before I close on my house or before I buy a car or whatever's going on, I'm definitely going to go for it if it makes sense, and I know that I can re-leverage that holding immediately after that so that I can then pay for the house, the car, whatever. I just don't want to run into a liquidity crisis. But otherwise, the other noteworthy addition here is the fact that I'm getting reimbursed for my Texas bar application, which I've already submitted. I'm going through the process right now, and thankfully my firm is actually reimbursing that, so that's nice. But in total, that leaves us with $763,440.36 in assets. And now onto liabilities. As I mentioned earlier, we're almost done making payments for Emily Ann's program since she's going to be graduating very soon, and then she'll have a job thereafter, so we can start paying these down far more aggressively. We're paying a little bit each month, but we're still adding more to the balance every month with new payments coming in. But the student loans are at 0% till the end of August, so we're not in a rush to pay these yet, but we still want to keep a very close eye on this, and if interest starts getting added on again, then we're probably going to spend a lot more energy on them, because right now they would be, if interest is reinstated, at something like 5 to 7%, depending on the type of loan, with most of the balance being at 7%. So that's pretty substantial. It is a tax write-off in the meantime, which is pretty helpful, but it's still a lot of interest to be paying, so it probably makes sense to focus a lot of energy on that, and then it'll kind of de-risk our overarching financial picture a bit by not having this big debt burden to worry about that isn't going towards an otherwise productive asset like a piece of real estate. Though cash not spent on the debt can be used to invest in things like real estate, so you can build up the portfolio by not paying off the debt, but still it's just something to keep an eye on. Our goal is to pay off all the student loans within the next 3 years or so. But for now, when it comes to debt paydown, it makes more sense to pay down our HELOC, which actually has an interest charge on it. It is revolving, so if, say, student loan interest came back online, then we could just pull from that HELOC and kind of switch over the balance to take care of the student loans to get rid of some of that interest cost. It's just a more flexible option to go for at the moment that makes more sense given our financial situation. So we'll probably leverage either our M1 finance margin or the HELOC to be used towards paying as part of our down payment or for paying for a car and all those big items I keep mentioning. And because I always try to mention it, I am going to pay these credit cards off every single month. Just because I have a balance here doesn't mean I'm paying interest on it. I don't want to pay 18 to 25 or whatever ludicrous interest rate that are on credit cards, so I never pay that. I always pay them down right away so that you don't have any interest costs. But in total, that leaves us with $625,217.18 in liabilities, which means our net worth is now $138,223.18, which is a gain of just over $10,000 for the month. So our debt ratio has decreased down to 81.89%, and our monthly passive income remains at $1,100. So after a rough month the previous episode, we had a relatively great month this time around. Though with the current volatility we're seeing in the market, a lot of it could get wiped away very quickly, so I'm not pretending like this is locked in forever. All we can focus on is continuing to make more money, adding more money to our portfolio, paying down debt, all the great things that improve your net worth position. And to that, let's talk a bit about the financial impact of moving to Houston from our current home of Chicago. First off, perhaps most obviously, there are tax savings. Currently in Illinois, you pay 4.95% as a state income tax. That doesn't include property taxes. That's right off the top of your income. You're paying about 5%. Well, in Texas, they don't have that, so there's no state income tax. So we'll essentially be getting a 5% raise just by moving down to Texas and by not having our income being sourced from Illinois. Instead, it's going to be coming from Texas, which doesn't have that state income tax burden. Just that alone is going to be saving us nearly $15,000 per year, just for moving, not doing anything else. But sure, you save on state income taxes, but what about other cost of living factors? Currently in Chicago, it's not the most unaffordable city, but I can't say it's particularly affordable. There are some areas that are, at least when I'm talking about the nice areas of Chicago, there are a lot of pretty dicey ones where you can get a pretty decent deal, I guess, if you're just looking at the top line number, but for what you're getting, I guess it makes some sense. But to put things in perspective, we're currently living in a townhome on the north side of Chicago, about a 40-minute train ride from downtown, so near the tippy top of Chicago, and that cost us $285,000 about a year ago. And our townhome is about 1,800 square feet if you include the basement, though if you don't, it's a lot less than that. And between the mortgage, insurance, and of course taxes, which are huge in Cook County, we're paying, we'll call it something like $2,500 to really more like $3,000 per month, depending on where utilities land. And that's in a place that doesn't have a lawn. We have shared walls next to us, so you don't have a ton of space, all things considered. It's a nice property. We like living here, but there are some definite drawbacks, and it is pretty expensive when you compare it to something like Houston. Because right now in Houston, we're looking at properties that are around a 25-minute drive from downtown, and we're talking about maybe a 4-bedroom, 3,000 square foot house that might have a pool, and we're looking at properties like that for $250,000 to maybe $300,000. And that also comes with a slightly lower tax bill. People complain about how property taxes are high in Texas, but compared to Cook County, there's really not much comparison. Because compared to Cook County, pretty much no one beats them on property taxes. So in other words, we'd be getting dramatically more house for the same or often less dollars per month compared to where we're at now, and we'll be technically closer to downtown. Although a big problem with Houston is the fact that it has basically no transit options. You are driving and you need to buy a car. So you have an added expense there. So whatever we'd be saving on not having to pay for our housing now, we'd probably be spending towards a car. But then you end up with 2 assets at that point. So it's really not all that bad of a deal. And again, in this case, you'd have just a lot more square footage, both on the lot itself and with the house. So you can get a really good deal compared to many of the areas in Chicago where housing does get very expensive, at least if you're trying to buy. But whatever the case, at least when we compare housing to housing, we're saving probably a few $100s per month just by moving down to Texas, and we're getting more house for those same dollars. But one significant cost, at least for us, by moving to Houston is the fact that we're getting away from family. Our family is currently in Chicago, or at least most of our family is in Chicago, and we see them all the time. So by moving to Houston, we're going to be seeing them less. And yes, I'm trying to focus on the financial impacts of this decision, but that's a very big cost in itself and is definitely the biggest negative with moving away from Chicago, at least for us. But we intend to not only live pretty close to the airport in Houston, but we do plan on making a number of trips back very regularly up to Chicago. I'm still going to be spending time in my Chicago office at my current law firm, so I'll be kind of splitting time between both offices in Houston and Chicago, just so I can stay very well connected with both teams and give myself more options for the future and try and provide more value as I'm practicing as an attorney. But those costs to come back up to Chicago every single month, we'll say, that's going to add up. We're going to be spending thousands of dollars on flights over the course of a year just to go back up and see family, which is definitely worth the cost, but it kind of negates some of the savings that we might have by just staying in Houston and never coming back to Chicago. And longer term, I'm definitely thinking about buying a smaller condo, maybe a one-bedroom sort of place by the airport in Chicago so that it's easier to come back home consistently. And then if we're going to be spending hundreds of dollars per month, maybe even thousands of dollars per month, probably not thousands, but we'll say multi-hundreds of dollars towards lodging, then it makes sense potentially to just buy a property, maybe rent it out on a short-term basis if we're allowed to do that, depending on the condo association. Just kind of going through ideas. That's something I'd be looking to do longer term so that it's much easier logistically to come back up to Chicago. And it's also an excuse to buy some more real estate. So I guess that's a good thing. But I'm definitely going to be doing a much more detailed breakdown on the exact cost and benefits to moving down to Houston, moving away from Chicago, because I know it's something that a lot of people are thinking about. Maybe you're not in Chicago, maybe you're in some other city and you're thinking about moving elsewhere. Maybe you're thinking about moving to Houston. So if that's the case, maybe you'll get something out of my future content about this whole move. Whatever the case, I'll keep you posted on what's probably going to be a pretty intense next few months. With that said, like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff, and be sure to check out the affiliate links in the description below. But until next time, take care.